Hi, my angels, it's Hailey Reese, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am so grateful that you are here, and I do hope that you are having an absolutely fantastic morning, afternoon, or night, whatever it is for you when this video finally reaches you. Today's video is absolutely an eerie one and has come so highly requested by so many of you. I'm pretty sure it's the time of year because every year since starting my channel around September, creeping up to October, I get so many requests for paranormal investigations and Ouija board horror stories, also haunted dolls as well. But today, we are diving into yet another true Ouija board horror story, except this one has a real twist to it that I'm very, very curious to see what it is that you guys think occurred here, what type of haunting and attachment this was, and just essentially what you believe happened, because this is an unusual experience. Now, I do want to give a very, very brief disclaimer. I know that there are some of you who have been watching my channel since the very beginning, and there are some of you who are new here. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you would know that I strongly advise people against playing with Ouija boards unless you know what you're doing, you know the seriousness of a Ouija board, and you know the rules of a Ouija board, how to play it, how to take it seriously, and more importantly, how to close it out and ensure that absolutely nothing follows you out of that board and into your world. Now, with that being said, I do want to mention, as I have in a lot of my recent Ouija board videos, that I do not believe that Ouija boards in and of themselves are inherently evil. I don't believe that each and every individual who's ever touched a Ouija board or who will play with a Ouija board, who has played with a Ouija board, is going to have some insane experience that's going to traumatize them and ruin their lives till the end of time. With that being said, though, I do believe it is a tool and a means for communication, and it does allow you to open a door to the other side, to the unknown. And when you do open a door to the unknown in any capacity, you don't always know who it is that's answering. And so I just always encourage people to do a little more research into these paranormal games and find out for yourself if you think you're equipped enough to know the warning signs. That's really what leads me into today's video and today's experience, because it is one of those that there were so many warning signs, so many red flags, things that were going wrong throughout. And just due to the simple fact that nobody in the experience, nobody in the room had any idea to look out for these things, things took a very dark turn. But as I mentioned at the start of this video, there is an even bigger twist. Final note, I apologize. I know I talk so much sometimes. I just wanted to answer the question I've been getting so very much over the last couple of weeks, which honestly, thank you. I am humbled. I'm appreciative. I am grateful that so many of you still care after all these years. But I've been getting so many questions as to whether or not I will be filming and posting my 31 Days of Halloween series this year on my channel, where I film and upload a video every single day for the month of October. And I am so excited to let you know that I am absolutely doing it. So I'm really, really excited as spooky season approaches. But enough yapping on my end. Let's get into today's terrifying, true Ouija board experience. So this experience begins with a teenager named Damien. Now, he never specified specifically how old he was at the time of this experience, but he did mention that he was in his late teens. Now, at the time of the experience, Damien was living in a relatively small town, but a town that his family had grown up in. It was generationally passed down to them throughout various points of the town. Now, what I mean by this is that his family had generational land in this town where certain aunts and uncles and, cousins had inherited land from their parents and so on. And it was really a space that a lot of their family chose to settle in. Now, Damien's mother had left living in this town when she was in her early 20s and kind of had fled for a start of a new life for her. The reason I'm mentioning this is because this new life for her really sent her spiraling down a whole spiritual crisis, as she described it, where she really lost herself and ended up in a really terrible relationship with what would become Damien's father. Things turned violent, things turned dark. Again, she turned from her faith at this time. It was really, really difficult. And when Damien was born, his mother realized that things were just not going to get better for them unless she left. And it was one of those flee in the night, pack up what you can, get the baby, get the hell out, and protect your family. She was in mama bear mode, and you go mama. So she got Damien out of that very quickly in his life, and he moved to this town, undisclosed, that a lot of his family was in. Now, the reason that this is so important to the story is that just 2 minutes up the road, Damien's cousin, Brettley, lived. Isn't that a cool name? I don't think I've ever heard of someone named Brettley. But Damien's cousin Brettley lived up the road. Now, Brettley's mom was Damien's mom's sister. So that was how they were cousins by relation. It was their moms were sisters, and then there was the two of them, and they were only 7 months apart. So they were very, very close growing up. Now, Damien described his childhood as normal. His family wasn't religious, wasn't spiritual. They believed in a higher power. But again, his mom had pulled from faith. She kind of found her way back, he described, as he was growing up, just through some really beautiful things that were happening in their lives. So she had gained a sense of spirituality once again, but overall had just lost her sense of God. And they didn't attend any sort of religious ceremonies of any sorts. But he had a relatively normal childhood. He said that they grew up spiritual, but again, not religious. He was super close with his cousin. He would call him B, and it was just the two of them. Now, because they were so close in age and they attended the same school in the same grade, the two boys had really accumulated a very similar friend group. They did have some friends that they were closer to that the other one wasn't as close with, but overall, when they would have sleepovers or they would go hang out or they would go do things, they were able to all do so together because they kind of intertwined their friend groups. So flash forward to one evening as the boys are in their late teens but still in school. They decide that they're going to all hang out at B's house, at Brettley's house, on this particular Friday night. Now, Damien remembers waking up on the Friday morning and going to school and seeing his cousin Brettley all excited for that night. He ended up pulling the group of boys aside by the lockers and telling them that he had found his father's Ouija board from when he was a kid, and that he was so excited to play with it because his dad had told him stories years ago that were so terrifying regarding the Ouija board. Now, everybody had believed that his dad was messing with him. B wasn't very close with his father whatsoever. He also kind of had a crazy father situation. He wasn't close with his dad. And whenever he saw his dad was described as this cool dude, kind of one of those guys who thinks he's cooler than everyone, rides on his motorcycle, has a F the world type of attitude, doesn't care that he's abandoned his kid. This is the description that we were given, right? And so they just assumed that he was trying to scare him, but they were all pretty excited that they had in fact found this Ouija board. Now, Damien remembers feeling like this was something bad right off the get-go. He was unfamiliar with Ouija boards. He only knew of them by what he'd seen on TV or in movies. He really had never had any sort of teachings about Ouija boards. His mom had never talked about them, and this was the first time any of his friends were really talking about it with him. So he was excited about it, but he definitely described feeling unsettled and uneasy about it as well. He described the school day as being a normal school day. After school, the boys went and grabbed something to eat. They went back to B's house, and the boys all kind of just hung out together. They said it was a normal night. It got dark. His mother went to bed, and the teenage boys were being rowdy, rambunctious, having fun when they decided to pull out the Ouija board. Now, one thing that Damien remembered immediately was that the Ouija board had this weird scratch, almost claw-like chunk taken out of it. And he noticed this and brought it up to the other boys. And that was when Brettley began telling the boys this story about how his father had encountered something dark, something evil, almost demonic in the board, and that it had tried to claw its way out. And right away, Damien said that he had this awful, awful feeling. But all the other boys thought that they were just messing with each other, that B was just pulling this prank on them and trying to get them scared, that it was an old board. It was very evidently an old board. So they thought, you know what? The board's old. It's been scraped around. Who knows where B found this? At the end of the day, we're good. They decided to play with the board. Now, right away, if any of the boys had known the rules of the Ouija board, the warning signs of the Ouija board, they would have known that things were going terribly wrong immediately. Figure eights were being drawn all across the board. The movements of the planchette were very sporadic. They were all over the place. They were just from one corner to the other, all around, aggressive. All of the boys seemed very uneasy. And as much as they all wanted to believe that it was another messing around with the planchette, it seemed off. And actually, even Damien mentioned at one point that he thought for sure B was messing with him, until he looked over and realized that he looked just as terrified as everybody else. And again, this was his cousin that he had grown up with. He knew his facial expressions. So at this point, Damien was deciding he wasn't going to play anymore and decided to verbally say out loud that he didn't want to play anymore. And that was when the planchette began moving, and the Ouija board spelt out a completely different name. Nobody looked alarmed, except for Damien. Right away, Damien was absolutely livid at his cousin. He was absolutely over the moon, devastated, livid. He stopped playing the game. He walked away. He doesn't even remember if he had closed out the game. Nothing. He was seeing red. And he just stormed upstairs, went to his aunt, woke her up, and told her he wanted to go home. Now, his cousin is all confused by this, and he's asking him, what happened? What did I do? What did I do? What are you talking about? Like, what happened? But he just ends up leaving. You see, what Brettley didn't know at the time was that the name that was spelled out on the Ouija board was Damien's birth certificate legal name. His legal name on his birth certificate. Now, he had went by a different name, as did his mother, after fleeing the abusive relationship with his father. And he had never went by his first name, only ever his middle name. And up until this point, as far as he knew, nobody knew his legal name except perhaps his cousin, which is why he suddenly felt like his cousin was messing with them. Prior to this, it wasn't just the crazy things all over the Ouija board. There was evil words coming up, just dark, sinister, gross, horrible things. And he felt like this was confirmation that now his cousin had done it. He said that he had went home that night, even though his cousin was blowing up his phone, trying to get a hold of him, trying to figure out what happened. And that night he had a horrific dream of a very specific Ouija board demon coming through to him, trying to scratch its way out of the Ouija board. And when he awoke to scratches all down his chest. But this is where the story becomes bizarre, you guys. That experience in and of itself is understandable. It's explainable. But it's what follows this experience, what follows Damien, that becomes even more unusual. The following morning, Damien explains everything to his mother at breakfast. He starts to tell her everything and how terrible the night was the night before, how everything with the Ouija board had went wrong, how clearly it was the cousin because he knew his, birth name and this, that. And his mom just looks at him and starts laughing, you guys, saying, what a creative dream. What a crazy dream. Like, you must be so excited for tonight. Like, what are you talking about, Damien? Damien looks at her and she proceeds to tell him, you guys, that he hasn't went for the sleepover yet, that yesterday was Thursday. None of that had happened. He'd came home from school, he'd went to sleep, and that it was Friday today. If anything, that would be tonight. To make matters even stranger, guys, okay, this is where things just take a shocking turn. Damien ends up back at school, obviously, on the now Friday morning. That should be Saturday after this whole thing has happened, right? Imagine this. Imagine you believe you've had a whole day. All these things occurred. Poof, you're in your bed. It's Friday morning, and this is all supposed to happen tonight. He gets to school. He sees his cousin. He walks right up to him. He's like, what the hell is going on? He starts trying to explain it to his cousin. His cousin isn't getting it. Not only does he have no memory of any of this, you guys, but he remembers going to bed on Thursday. It is now Friday, but he's looking at Damien so confused because inside his locker is his dad's Ouija board with the scratches in it that he had just found that nobody else knew about, and he was going to show them for their sleepover that night. Now, this experience would absolutely traumatize Damien because he believed it was definitely something evil. There was no way he could have even known there were claw marks in the Ouija board, but it gets even creepier, you guys. Years later, Damien would get a phone call from his cousin, who now had a whole other life of his own, calling him freaking out, stating that he had finally played with the Ouija board and that something evil came through it and that he is severely haunted by it. But Damien doesn't know, you guys. Was this some sort of premonition? Was this some sort of a dream? What happened? Where did that day go that he had the experience? You could say it was just a dream, but how would he have known about the Ouija board and the scratches in it? Oof. I don't know. What do you guys think of this absolutely terrifying Ouija board experience? I would love to know down in the comment section below. This one had a twist like I've never heard before. Sorry, you guys. I just had the craziest cough attack. Like, when you get a tickle in your throat and then you just can't stop coughing, and now my eyes are watering. Anyways, I have just never heard one with a twist like that, and I would love to know what you guys think happened. So definitely let me know down in the comment section below any and all of your theories, experiences, and video suggestions. And that is it for today's video. If you guys are new to my channel or you are just not yet subscribed but you enjoy my content, I would love it if you would go ahead and click that subscribe button, and please give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Remember, my loves, to do all things with kindness, and until next time, I love you. Bye, guys.